Stand for Pledge of Allegiance, then moment of silence. Moment of silence, please. Thank you. Be seated. There's been a request that when we speak, try to speak close to the microphone so people at home can hear. And some concern that they can't hear the voices sometimes. Need an approval of the agenda as presented.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those, any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Right now is public comments. If anybody would like to speak, now's your time. We have, looks like one person.
Good morning, Rita Miller.
Identify yourself, too.
Rita Miller, Tax Administrator. Update about the tax foreclosure sales that occurred on August the 22nd. As of this morning, parcel at 65 South Fork Church Road, the opening bid was $10,200. As of this morning, it is at $84,000, and that bid closes September the 23rd. Property at 1622 Scenic Valley Road, opening bid was $11,600. As of this morning, current bid $47,250. That closes September the 20th. And lot number 44 of Prime Mountain Estates, the opening bid was $4,700. It has closed at $54.50.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Yes.
we have an additional 5 people signed up to speak.
Okay, who's next?
I believe he's standing at the podium.
Okay, David, introduce yourself.
Good morning, folks. My name's David Higgs. I'm Chief of Glade Creek Fire Department, and while I'm standing here, I would ask to have extra time, save me getting up and down 3 times. I've got 3 subjects. I would ask permission, if you would, please give me a little extra time to go over these subjects, please.
I would make that motion, Mr. Chair, to extend the time limit to allow him to cover the 3 subjects.
That's fine, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, this radio problem, not just Glade Creek, but everywhere. Yesterday, we had a lady die. I'm not saying it's because of that, but in my opinion, it made a big difference. A very big difference. We have no damn radio service. We've talked about this for years and years and years. And there's no reason that Alleghany County can't provide radio service for our first responders. You can't hear on them. Part of the time it's all static. Part of the time it sounds like a helicopter in the background. Whenever they switched over from the sheriff's department to the county, Ashe County took over for a couple of days and dispatched us. Everything's clear as a bell. They had no problems whatsoever. Then it went back down here. We're right back where we was. We cannot hear. Yesterday we had a lady dying. Could not talk to the ambulance. Could not talk to dispatch. It was nothing but a cluster trying to get a hold of somebody to get help for this lady. Would she have died anyway? Maybe so. But in my opinion, it might have made a difference. That's my opinion. I'm not God, and I can't say whether it would or wouldn't. But there's no reason we can't have radios. Yes, Mr. Carter has put $20 million in the bank. Well, how many lives have been lost because we won't spend money on radios? We'd rather have it in the bank, and in my opinion, let people die, or spend it on radios. If we can't provide a radio service here in Alleghany County, why don't we go to Ashe County, rent 2 spots up there, and let our dispatchers go up there and dispatch out of Ashe, because we can hear. We can hear out of Grayson County. We have no problems except Alleghany. And it's not just me. Chief of Cherry sitting right here today tell you the same thing. There's no reason we can't have a damn radio system that works. And it's not up to us. It's up to you guys to provide it. You're supposed to. So, I'm just beyond wits end with this. We grumble, and last week, Daniel and a couple more all over the county sounded like it did 10 years ago, and them hollering at dispatch, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? That's in the past, folks. There shouldn't be no can you hear me now. The update that we have in radio systems, we should be able to hear. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. I'm telling you, something's got to be done. There's going to be lawsuits. If I was a gentleman yesterday, I'd be up here next week. I mean, me trying to call an ambulance on telephones and trying to work and tell what this lady's problems is, and you can't tell on the radio. Can't hear it. I mean, it's time something's done. We grumbled, and Michelle knows. Every fire commission meeting, we grumble. And so you brought that back to them. You brought it back to them. Because I watch these meetings and I don't see nothing brought up about it.
We've talked about it.
Okay.
Yep.
What you done about it?
Public comments.
So, okay. All right, let's get back to we're going to get off of that and get back to the fire contracts. We had our last fire commission meeting. Michelle was there. A few days later, our contracts come. There was nothing mentioned at that meeting about our contracts. Nothing. We have to wait till they come in the mail. She should have brought them with her, hand them out. We'd have had them. Would not have worked better?
Didn't have them.
Didn't have them. So you didn't have them either.
It's public comments.
Okay. So, and then Michelle sets the tones for all the fire chiefs to come see April Ham on a Friday about our contracts. Well, our contract's not signed because it's according to where it falls when we sign it, when we have meetings, okay? I come up on Friday to see Miss April. She's not working. She's off. She don't even know that we're supposed to be there to see her. Why would she set the tones for us to come see April and she ain't even going to be in the office? Okay. Third thing, I'm tired of the damn harassment. I'm just tired of it. Insurance at the fairgrounds, I've got insurance for all year, for every day. At 3 o'clock on Friday, they come shut me down because I don't have insurance. I've got paperwork showing. Don't worry about that sign. I've got paperwork
You
showing.
got 15
Don't
seconds.
interrupt me then. So I've got insurance for the full year for any time we're there, okay? All it is harassment. You, Bobby, was supposed to check on something. The county got a bill for $4,900 from the town for water, and you supposed to stop and check on it.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome. And I paid $4,000.
David,
And I'm tired of
your
Greg
time
Crawford,
is up.
Mark Handy, and
David,
Thomas
Your
Poole.
time is up.
He is a commissioner.
Your time is up, David. Thank you for your comments. We gave you more than the 5 minutes. Thank you.
I guess
very
you
much.
did.
Thank you.
I'll be back next week.
Anybody else?
John Bennett.
You 3 or 5?
3.
3.
Hey y'all, I'm John Bennett. I'm captain of Glade Creek Fire Department, and I just want you to listen to something. Anybody know what that is? That's what it sounds like when you go down the road to go get somebody's wife out of the floor when they're dying. That's what we hear. And nobody else is going to hear it, but that's what we hear. I tell you, I got a little girl at home. And when I go out somewhere and give my time and go try to help people, she expects me to come home. And I'll be damned if I'm not going to come home because of your radio system. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I believe Captain White is also here.
David, introduce yourself. You 3 or 5?
3.
3.
I'm David White with the Cherry Lane Fire Department, chief of the fire department. I'm just here today because the radio systems. We bring it up, we bring it up, we bring it up. Nothing ever happens. I got firemen out here trying to let us know, we got a call on Elkin Mountain. Now, they're at the top of Elkin Mountain. Not on the mountain, they're up at the top. I'm at the Liberty gas station. I can't hear the dispatcher. Trying to talk to them, all I hear is exactly what John Curtis showed you. I can't hear what he's got. One specific time we get there, they say it's a car fire. Get there, tractor and trailer on fire. Then they page it out and say it's a need traffic control. Get there, it's a tractor and trailer laying on its side. We didn't know that because we couldn't hear. It's going to cost somebody their life, and we got to get something changed. We got to get something fixed. It's just ridiculous. And I'll say this, I don't think that a man out here doing a volunteer position job, working as hard as we do, should be harassed by anybody. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you, David. Anybody else, Mr. Carter?
No one else signed up, Mr. Chairman.
Is anybody else got any other public comments at this time? See no more movement. I'll go ahead and close the public comments at this time. Thank you all for your statements. I will say that I've talked to some people at the Piney Creek Fire Department, and they've got same issues. Sometimes it's hard for them to hear. It was relayed to me there was a brush fire up close to my property. It wasn't me, it was somebody else. But when the firemen tried to get the information from dispatch, it was just static, they said. So I think at some point we need to look at this, and I believe Daniel may have something today or some information, but apparently there's some bad radio receptions, or I don't know if it's the equipment, the towers, or whatever, but it's something we need to look at, I would think. With that being said, we'll move right along to Section A, the consent agenda as presented. Is there any questions? Need a motion and a second.
Make a motion that we accept the consent agenda with the exception of item number 5. I believe that should be a separate vote, sir.
Which item?
5.
5. Need a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Rita, would you, where is she? There she is. Item number 5.
It's a request for a release of a residential solid waste fee that was on a house or piece of property that hasn't been lived in many, many years. It didn't used to have a solid waste fee. It got put back on an error, but I don't release solid waste fees without board approval.
If I may, Mr. Chair, it was placed back on in error,
Yes.
so at one time there was no solid waste
Yes.
fee. Motion to approve.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? And that's with your recommendation
Yes.
also.
Yes, sir.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed likewise? Motion carries. 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving right along to Section B, presentations to the board. Daniel, about 9/11.
Good morning.
PSAP, yes.
So back on August the 14th, we had our assessment from the North Carolina 911 Board. Sounds like it's echoing. So the state started doing these assessments of our PSAPs, and they had actually announced this back in 2017, and then because of COVID, all that stuff kind of got shuffled about. So this is actually the first time our dispatch center has been assessed by the North Carolina 911 Board. They presented us a document that was almost 100 questions, and I have it here. And it comes with a site visit, but they want to know things like, how our CAD system works, how does who does our maintenance contracts, questions about generators, battery backups, you name it, all kinds of stuff in here. And what they came back with was a small report that identified a handful of deficiencies. And you guys have this in your packet, there are a total of 11 deficiencies found, if you look at it, from just at face value. But if you boil that down, there's actually 3 deficiencies in the 911 center. The first of those is in relation to a UPS battery backup system. Now, we have individual battery backups on every piece of equipment in there, but the state is now requiring what they're calling a centralized battery backup system. So it's basically one big chunk of a battery that also has an annunciator. So if the power goes down, that window between when the power goes off and the generator kicks on, this thing's supposed to, carry the load to the center, and also let someone know that it's activated. And there are a handful of deficiencies, like I said, that relate to that. The second one was basically a lack of a radio maintenance agreement and the preventative records that go along with that. Now, that stuff's all in place, and we've been doing it, I guess, as you say it, as a gentleman's agreement, kind of. We couldn't find any record of an actual maintenance contract anywhere. So that's something that we're working on, too. The third deficiency was with a quality assurance process for our dispatchers. And we had we've just kind of done QA in there at my discretion for the last 6 months or a year. They just want to see a more formalized process. So those are our 3 deficiencies: a battery backup system, some paperwork for radio contracts, and a QA process. When they came, they did mention that they would give us, we had 12 months to make corrective action. We're already working on that. And I think part of that's coming up here in a little bit, your first time around. So I've already been getting quotes for the battery backup system. The 911 board will pay for the majority of it. I don't know the details of what all yet, but we're working on getting quotes so I can send them down to Raleigh. And then, of course, like I mentioned with QA, I'm developing a process to do that. They want monthly and annual, metrics to be evaluated. So without further ado, if you guys have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those.
Any questions?
Just a comment, I'm surprised why they want a central battery backup system and the expense that's going to be involved with that, because that's going to be a substantial piece of equipment.
I'd fully anticipate it being somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000, yes.
We've got individual equipment on
That's correct.
battery backup to take it until our emergency generator gets up.
You're absolutely correct, but it's what they say, so they're the regulating
Common sense
authority.
and government should never be mentioned in the same sentence. Thank you.
There's several things in here. When are you started working on these deficiencies?
I've already begun, yes.
And there's a time period.
They said they wouldn't be back for their revisit any sooner than 12 months, so that tells me that I have a year, essentially. Now, I fully anticipate being done well in advance of a year.
Have you communicated with them that you started this process?
Yeah, it's actually part of their requirements, that we acknowledge this assessment and that we send corrective action plans to them. So that has already taken place, yes.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
So a year from now, we can say that we are anticipating and make an application for grants to put the central battery backup in, and that would satisfy their requirement. And 2 years down the road, we finally get around to it.
But it's not going to happen that way.
Well, yeah, I realize that, but technically, we could do that.
I think it has to be corrected within a year, so
Okay, so they put that caveat.
it can't just be planned for, it has to actually be corrected, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you,
Um,
Mr. Roten.
I know that, I'm not putting you on the spot, I hope, but about some of these concerns about the radios and the dead areas or gray areas, whatever you want to call them, what's your off-the-cuff assessment?
It's a challenging situation. I'm not going to say that I'm oblivious to the fact that there are areas in the county where radios are not good, or been reported as not good. Now, we spent some time last week riding around, I think David mentioned that, testing areas, and it was signal perfect? Absolutely not. Overwhelmingly, was I able to communicate with dispatch? Yes. Now, I don't know what dispatch was hearing because I was out in the field with my radio. I do not deny that these guys have some problems. I'm trying to figure out what the root cause of the issue actually is. So I'm afraid to pass judgment on that at this time.
Mention something.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. When I took over as fire commissioner a year ago, that's the first thing I heard on the very first night was communications was an issue. So we started jumping in and tackling these issues. And, you know, first of all, well, Daniel, he's been very helpful through the whole thing and said that, you know, it's a multi-layer issue. So we worked on a switch out in Laurel Springs, and we tried switching over to a different tower out there. And it worked a little bit, but then we found out it was better the other way, right? We switched back.
Well, we added another repeater,
Added
and
another
they're both
repeater.
active right now,
Yes.
so.
Okay, so then we went to, we invested some money out at Roaring Gap, putting a tower up out there at the club and put a generator on it, which cost the county $60,000, I think. And thinking that that would help the issue. So we got all that implemented, and evidently it's not helped the issue like it needed to. So then we talked about what is the solution. So I don't want the general public to think that we haven't talked about this, because we have talked about this, and we're trying to get to a solution. You know, Viper radios will be a solution, but that's a huge expense. And, you know, Mr. Carter got us a grant for some Viper radios, and we have some Viper radios coming to the county, and I think we've already received some of those.
That's Daniel's credit, not mine.
Okay, well, you wrote the grant then, so sorry, you guys together, but
We're
anyway.
interchangeable.
Okay,
We
all
look-
right.
We look alike.
So, you know, I've asked a lot of the people who have knowledge of the radio systems, a lot of people who use the radio system, what is the answer? And I get lots of different messages. It could be doing a UHF, VHF, I don't know all the technicalities about it. It could be Vipers, it could be different things, but, you know, we do need to come up with a solution to solve this, because it seems like we've tried the fixes and none of them have worked so far. But it's not like we haven't been trying to fix the issue. We have been, but we haven't gotten there yet. So, and I mean, they have a great point. I mean, Ashe County's probably more rugged terrain than we are, and they get good service over there. So it doesn't make sense that we don't. And I mean,
Well, and I had a conversation with Ashe County's dispatch supervisor a little while back and asked him how his service was, and he said, we have dead spots just like everybody else does. You know, so, I mean, it's not that they have some perfect system over there that works either all the time.
right.
I mean, we live in a mountain county. You could put a repeater on every hill in this county, you're still gonna have a dead spot somewhere. Now, with that said, we do have some issue that needs to be identified. But, I mean, I don't think it's not just a blank check, let's go spend a bunch of money, until we can actually identify what the issue actually is. And that's what I've been trying to work on as I can. And once I find the problem, I'll be more than happy to come to you guys and ask for the money to fix it. But not until I identify exactly what that issue is.
And I think the firemen will vouch for me when I say we talk about communications every fire commission meeting, don't we? Not one goes by that we don't talk about communications. So we've got to find a solution somehow to make it better.
John?
Well, what I'm going to speak of is basically where we stand in this regard. And I'm going to speak from 20 years as a communicator in the United States Marine Corps, and also as a frequency manager. Now, frequency manager, there's only one school for frequency management on the face of the earth. That is in Biloxi, Mississippi. It deals with international treaty and also propagation of radio waves, 6 months long, and it is extensive. Also, I sold and designed communications equipment for Coastal Electronics, the second oldest Motorola dealer in the United States. I did that for 4 years. Designed radio systems for Corning, New Hanover Regional Medical Center, New Hanover County, Brunswick County, and surrounding areas for their first responders. Where we stand in this county is we're up a creek without a daggone paddle, to be honest with you. We are operating on a very high frequency system between 135 and 155 megahertz. Whenever we started in the communications business, you don't realize that as 50 years ago, whenever we were looking at these types of systems, actually 70 years ago, we were limited to basically one. It was a high-frequency radio system, and there was a band of frequencies that were utilized by highway patrols called high band. That was whenever we saw a highway patrolman going down the road and there was a large whip antenna on the back of it. As the frequency spectrum opened up away from the military, then we started getting different systems in. The next system that opened up to the civilian world was the VHF, which is where we are. Now, back in, you could put in a repeater. Whenever you put in a repeater, you have two separate frequencies, a receive and a transmit frequency. That spectrum of frequencies that was available to the civilian public rapidly filled up. It got to the point where there were no repeater frequencies. We had a repeater frequency pair up until we had to move the towers. And at that time, whenever you make changes, the FCC will look at the frequencies and the latest restrictions will come in. Alleghany County was interfering with a volunteer fire department outside of Roanoke for years. Because we're so high up and the topography of the land is such, that frequency, our transmissions were hitting that department and causing interference. But we were grandfathered. Guess what? We changed tower locations. That happened whenever a tower that the county was using, a gentleman died and the family decided they were going to sell the property, and it was a hindrance to have that tower on the property. So county came off of that tower and we went on to another tower that was costing us $10,000 a year just to have the antennas on there. Then we went into a simulcast system. Problem that we've got, whenever we lost that tower, we lost one of those repeater pair frequencies. We only have one frequency licensed in Alleghany County for our first responders. The other frequency that is being utilized on the simulcast system was licensed to our communications provider, and he is allowing us to utilize that so that we can have a simulcast system. Problem that we now have is we can't put up towers. We can put up a tower, but it's going to be limited to 185 feet. If we go up to 186 feet, we've got to put lighting on it. We've got to report it to the FCC, and the Federal Aviation Committee gets involved in it because we are a training route for the military through here. Well, height is coverage. We're not gonna go up because we've got a county ordinance that caps us at 185 feet. That's useless. So we have to utilize the towers that exist. Now, tower space is at a premium because of the wind loads that we have on the towers. If you put up a tower and you invest $100,000 in that tower, you want a return. Because of the wind loads that we have up there, you cannot put that many antennas on there. Therefore, you are going to pay a premium price for the few antennas you're going to be able to put on that tower. So everything is working. Is there a solution? Yes. We can go to a UHF frequency, 450 megahertz to 470 megahertz. That is, in World War II, that was the frequency band that the radars were listed in, utilized in, because the technology allowed us to go up to that. As the radars went to the gigahertz range, then these frequencies opened up. Guess what? 450 to 470 megahertz is crowded. You write a number down between 450 and 470 megahertz. There are 500 licenses on those frequencies throughout the United States. You have to separate them so that they don't interfere with each other, and that's the challenge the FCC has whenever they assign the frequency. You will not get a UHF frequency pair for a repeater system because it is so crowded. What will the FCC tell you that you need to do? You need to go to 800 to 900 megahertz trunking systems. When I came on this board, we had a bid to replace the first responder radio system. It was $2.8 million. Today, that $2.8 million could easily be doubled, and you will not get total coverage. APCO requirements, the APCO standard for first responders is 95% coverage in an area. It is simply impossible for you to give 100% coverage with a radio system. So, commercial, it is 90%. We are lucky to get 90% coverage for our first responders in Alleghany County simply because of the topography of the land. If we go to an 800 or 900 megahertz trunking system, we can piggyback on the state system. State Highway Patrol is using it. This is the way they get their data for their in-car computer system and also for their communication systems. Very good system. It's basically the same system that your cell phone system works on, but we got a problem. You cannot send page tones over an 800 or 900 megahertz trunking system. So you would have to utilize the VHF system that we currently have or go to a 450 to 470 UHF band. If we go to a UHF band, that means trying to put up more towers or getting on towers, and every pager in the county would have to be changed, and we would have to change out the equipment on the towers from VHF to UHF. If we do VHF, we've got the same problem we've got right now. Nothing changes. If there is a problem with the console or the equipment, that can be rectified. Whenever we started talking about a new communication system, get out the checkbook. I don't think a county, especially with the obligations we have with the new transfer facility and now the new school, that is simply not going to be in the budget. I don't think you've got $5 million, $6 million hanging around for a communication system, do you, Mr. County Manager?
Not in the current budget, no.
Not in the current budget. And everybody's going to kick if we start raising taxes. Now, with the problems that we've got right now, there can be a solution, but whenever you start looking at simulcast system, What you're doing right now, I believe we are transmitting and receiving on 6 separate towers. The reception is not a problem, except where you are trying to get that signal back to the consoles here in the PSAP. Whenever we transmit, you've got different transmitters at different locations that have got to be synchronized. If that starts going out of synchronization, it can cause the problems that have been described right here. But that is a maintenance problem. One of the things that, whenever we had the inspection from the PSAP committee, was trying to rectify was a monthly maintenance check. I was frankly surprised that we were not doing at least a quarterly. That was what Motorola standards, whenever you deal with Motorola, you march by their drummer. And they will dictate that if you have a Motorola console, it will be checked monthly. That's part of the contract. You violate that, the warranty is going to come off of that console. It is easy for things to happen. I'll give you an example. You can have skip, especially on VHF, not so much on UHF at this time of year. Anytime you have hot days and cold nights, you can get temperature inversions. What happens with skip? Suddenly you will find that you are talking to a company that has the same frequency you're utilizing in Oklahoma. It is skipping through the atmosphere and it will come down wherever it is. Skip happens, ducting happens whenever you have high cloud cover, things of this nature. In the 800 megahertz system, you don't have that. But you know what you do have? 800 megahertz, if you want to divide 468 divided by the frequency in megahertz, whenever you go to the 800 megahertz system, or that band, roughly the wavelength is 6 inches, and it's going to vary depending on the frequency. Guess what? The long lolly pine needle is 6 inches. That's why in the eastern part of North Carolina, you will have a degradation of your cell phone during the daggone spring and fall whenever the sap starts running. Because that signal that comes out of the tower, it sees that loplolly pine needle as an antenna going to ground, because that's what that signal wants to do, is go to ground. Now, this is a long explanation just to give you some idea of what we are going to run into. Granted, the equipment is in, it has not worked, we've got to find out, period. But the solution may not be what we want to hear. You can change a lot of things, but you cannot change what God has made, and this is a propagation that we're running into. It is technical. It'll pull your hair out. Thank God that we now have a maintenance contract. Hopefully, we've got something in the maintenance contract that will ensure performance so that we can hold them to it. But I'll tell you right now, you better button up, Buttercup. You tell the man that's providing the maintenance right now and the towers, we're going to go with somebody else. Good luck, because he owns one of the frequencies. Bottom line, we are caught by the short and curlies. We're going to have to work with it, do the best we can. Gentlemen, you are correct. You deserve a better system. We will do everything we can to provide it. But please remember, the laws of physics are the laws of physics. There's only so much that we can do, or our provider can do. But we will work within those guidelines. Daniel, I'm sure, will make someone's life miserable, and we'll do what we can, but that's the long and short of it. You may not like it, but this is it. We've got to maximize what's available, and I'm sure that we will. Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to take so much time, but it is a complicated subject, but it is an important one. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the explanation. Timmy?
So the Roaring Gap Tower thing, it is up and running
Yes, sir.
100%. How do we know, like, I know we're talking about this maintenance thing, which I think is a great idea, but how do we know if something's not working 100% at one of these sites? We don't really.
I don't have a great answer for you.
That's what the maintenance thing will help us with.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so I was just doing some numbers, like, we have 6 sites. Of course, I know, we have, in Alleghany, we have 234 square miles. And at those 6 sites, you break those down, that's around 39 square miles. So what's the range on these radios?
I don't know.
We
It's,
don't know.
Take square root of the height of the antenna, and it will give you your radio line of sight. So if you have 100-foot, if your antenna is 100 feet, you can count on 10 miles radio line of sight.
Out the hills, but, because at that, it's about 6-mile range on 6 sites. So,
But let me qualify one thing. The weakness in the system is your handheld radio. Your handheld radio, that antenna height will be the height of the operator, if it's 5 feet. And at that, you've, it's nitpicky, but please remember, anytime you see someone holding a radio horizontally, the signal's going into the air. The radio is designed for the antenna to be straight up. That radio, if it is functioning optimally, will have 3 watts at 6 feet. Where you get your distance is the receiving or the transmitting at the tower. That can have up to 100 watts of power. So your weakness in the system is your handheld radio. We've overcome that with mobile radios where they can have up to 100 watts in the VHF band, but no one will ever use it anymore because the expense that's involved, and I'm sorry to interject.
Go ahead, Timmy.
so the maintenance is, when you get it set up, is once a month? Or do we know?
I don't know if
We're
we've
still working.
exactly identified all that just yet.
Okay, so I think the point is, just like the last, we are continually trying to improve this, because 6 sites is proof of that, and that's the last one, in Roaring Gap, was hoping to take care of that area where we have some of those bad spots. But I think the deal is we're going the right direction. You just keep trying to problem solve and figure out the maintenance thing and try to get up a setup on that. And then, like you said, you got to identify it. I think everybody'd be willing to spend some money on it if we know what the heck we're doing, So I think we're moving in the right direction. Good.
Mr. Carter?
Just a question. I don't know the answer to, but when was the last time that a propagation study was done for Alleghany County?
Not during my tenure here.
Not that I know.
And the reason I ask that, and I know that Commissioner John, you probably have more experience in this area than certainly I, but in the past, when I was involved in looking at improvements to radio systems, one of the first things that was done was to get basically you put an RFP out because it's going to cost some money and it's going to exceed your normal thought process. I'll just tell you that. But you get a group in here that is qualified and trained to do a propagation study. And they go around and I'm not saying what Daniel and anybody else is doing is incorrect. But I think you'll agree with me, Daniel, is it's kind of hit and miss. We're trying to narrow down. Get a group that does that every day, and you bring them in here, and you turn them loose. Now, it's not going to solve it overnight, because it's going to take time to have that study done. But they're going to do that study, they're going to come back, they're going to tell you if your existing sites, what they're doing. They're going to project other sites that will improve your capacity or your ability to communicate. When they do that, of course, good chance is you don't own the site that they're going to identify as additional ones that produce. You're going to have to go through the process, if you choose, to acquire those sites. You're going to have to go through all the development and putting up the towers, meeting what Commissioner John is talking about with the limitations on the height restrictions of such. But you'll get a study back that will tell you how to improve your communications. And I'm not saying that anyone here is not qualified to do that. What I'm saying is this group will eliminate the kind of the hunt and the peck mode of it. And it's correct. Everyone that I've ever seen, you have a certain percent coverage with what I call an actual in-vehicle radio versus a handheld radio. And everybody here will agree with that. They're certainly more powerful than that. But if you're going to do it, I think the board should seriously look at beginning that process. And I will tell you, it very well likely, I've seen additional site cost just for one additional site exceed $300,000 to $400,000 by the time it's done. So if you do this and a company comes back and they tell you you need 3 extra sites and here they are, very quickly you could be $1 million right there. It just depends on the lay of the land, what you have to do to get to it, develop it, etc. But you'll know that. And if it hasn't been done during your tenure and nobody here can identify it, and I defer to these guys if they've ever heard of anything being done, that's probably a good step to be looking at.
I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I have done the propagation studies, but whenever I did the propagation studies or requested the propagation studies, it was with Motorola. Motorola would come back and they would give me, in the 800 megahertz realm, buildings and where in the building a 800 megahertz signal would hit. Whenever I would do radar coverage studies through ECAC in the military, my radar coverage was within 6 inches. What I liked about Motorola and was so great, whenever they did a propagation study and you bought that system from Motorola, once it was installed, if it didn't work, they made it work. And they paid for what it took to make it work. So we did a system for New Hanover County 30 years ago. It was a multi-million-dollar system, and Motorola ended up putting another $1.5 million in to make it work like they said it would do. But this is expensive. The propagation study, not so much. But it will give you, with a certain degree of accuracy, where we will have coverage, taking into account vegetation, time of year, things of this nature. That should be the first thing that we do and start looking at it. That will tell us where we've got to fill in. But here again, if there's not a mountain where they say we need a mountain to put a tower on, That, we can't change that. If there's a mountain there that we can put a tower up, now we've got a problem with the FAA, if it's inside the training route, the FCC, because a tower that is transmitting from that location may interfere with some others if there's a frequency available. There's a lot of potholes, and this is gonna be, it's not gonna be done overnight. It's not gonna be done next month. Once that propagation study comes back, it's going to take some time and effort and from study, but the county manager's correct. The first thing to do is get a prop study so that we know where we are, and hopefully we can get it rectified. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any follow-up?
No, I mean, this is just an ongoing issue that's gonna take some time to be solved, and, you know, we've been working on that, so, I think a propagation study is definitely in order.
Hey, Mr. Carter, go ahead.
And I'll just, if the consensus of the board is to look at that, an RFP doesn't cost you anything but an advertisement cost. So, judging by what I've heard and seen today, I think we could put one together, put it out, receive those submittals back in, and begin that process.
Is that a consensus of the board to go ahead with the propagation? Let Mr. Carter go ahead and start.
Do we not need to put it on the agenda to vote next month, next meeting? Put it on the first meeting in October.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, just trying to provide some resolution.
I would recommend, Mr. Chair, that we place it on the board for a vote next month, because we have lives on the line.
I'll second the motion.
Well, Daniel, you put that on the agenda for,
October the 7th.
yeah, on the 7th.
I'm a little confused. Does that mean that you can go ahead and put an RFP out and have some quotes back and then we vote on it? Or do we have to vote to do an RFP?
An RFP is only going to cost you what it is for the advertisement cost. Most likely, you have that amount for that coverage of that cost within your budget. Mr. Gregg is right. If you're going to vote on something, unless you waive the rules, which you have the ability to do, you need to put that request on your next agenda. Now, you can waive the rules, and you can do it now, if that's what the consensus of the board is.
I'd make a motion that we waive that rule.
Second.
Why do we waive them this time? Some other time you won't waive them.
Because lives are on the line.
We got a motion, and do we have a second?
Yes, sir.
Now, I just want to be sure what the motion is, if you go ahead and repeat it. We're waiving our procedure to go ahead and allow you to get started now.
Yes, to place the RFP and provide the necessary advertisement for such.
Is there any discussion? Any questions? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed likewise? Then you got that motion and it's approved. So you can go ahead and get started this week
Okay.
or this afternoon.
Daniel's not ready to fall asleep.
Daniel, anything else?
Not unless you guys have any other questions for me.
Thank you very much. Next up is a finance update. Robin?
Good morning, Commissioners. The year-to-date revenue is $342,616.31. The year-to-date expenditures is $4,321,903.24. The approved budget is $21,407,775. The bank balance for the checking as of today is $8,492,097.16. The savings is $18,563,051.58. We have received the sales tax, and we'll have those numbers for you next month. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for a very good report. Appreciate it. Facility updates, David Spicer.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Board. Certainly, thank you for allowing me to come to talk to you. So, in the Facilities Administration Building, we have added a handrail upstairs that runs the full length of the hallway. That has been placed in there for folks to assist folks in getting to the tax and tag office, as well as the Veterans Administration. We have cut a doorway in between the tax office and the GIS so that we're preparing to be ready for reval. At the courthouse, the painting is still going on, and it's looking tremendously better than we're almost done with the painting. They've got some stuff coming for windows. That's upcoming. Stanley have been there. They have been in place to make sure that they get everything ordered when the boilers come in and do the HVAC system, so that is no delays. When that happens, it's going to be going on and carry on until it's completed. The front of the jail looks different. We've got all that glass and that metal that was in disrepair. All that's gone. That has been fixed and redone, so that is all in much better shape now. At the transfer facility, we're still on schedule with TRC. They have, Mr. Carter gave them the go-ahead to start with the plans as was presented to us. That is going on, so we should have plans for that structure and facility real soon. So in commingle, we had 3.64 tons. In cardboard, we had 6.49 tons. We had 14.5 tons of scrap metal, which yielded the county $2,833.60. Things is going well over there, so that's helping and improving things. Animal control, we had 17 calls to assist the Sheriff's Department. We had two dogs in livestock. We had 10 well checks. We had 5 cats and or dogs picked up. We had 19 running at large, 2 attacks, 2 quarantine, 1 trap, with a total of 110 hours, 58 calls, and 759 miles traveled. So that is all I have. I'll entertain any questions that you might have.
Questions, John, Michelle, Tammy, Greg? Just to follow up on the flagpole for the BDC building?
Yes, sir. I have talked to Courtney and Marge, and we have a placement for that, and that's in process.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else, Mr. Carter? Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Moving right along to Section C, General Business this is for information. Commissioner requests John Irwin brief from Building Committee on all meetings with Alleghany County Board of Education concerning the new high school, page 26. Mr. John?
That's just my request. Have you met with the Board of Education? Have we had any more correspondence with them? Just to figure out what's going on?
Timmy?
You put that on me, huh?
Pass a buck.
So, yes, we did meet with them, and so what the meeting consisted of was meet with the contractor who had presented a plan to, and he broke down a plan to get the thing in place. He used monies in hand, considering the, the two grants and then what the county commissioners committed to. What he did, he went down to the back end of this, and there was 3 or 4 or 5 items that they're looking to defer. So what this does is, okay, the total amount with the two grants combined and with what we committed to, put the deficit of $6.349 million is what they lack in funding. Well, what J.M. Cope proposed is they're looking at doing a partial general allowance for deferring, which is about $479 million. They're looking at deferring entire IT allowance, because some of these things, to explain this, is on the second phase. And then he was looking at deferring the entire FFE allowance, which is furniture, of about $2 million. And then there's one section of the vocational shops on the back end of about 6,600 square feet, another $2.5 million. So basically, they're deferring some amounts of money that's in the second phase that gets them down to $60 million, and it's right under the threshold of monies that they are guaranteed to have. This, according to his explanation, would allow them to lock in their subs, lock in their materials, and move forward. Now, in this conversation, we had their legal counsel was online, and of course, my question was, is this legal, first of all? And he said that it was, and that also the contracts that they've done this before, and that Fred is going to write up some kind of contract to this effect. Now, Bobby's concern was there's no guarantee, because we're started in this process of the LGC to get the approval. So the question was asked from the legal counsel was, okay, so what if something crazy happens, the LGC says we're not going to loan you the money? So that was thrown around a little bit, and the way this is done, and the way this is going to be done, which we'd asked before, if it's a two-phase deal, could we appropriate funds later? But I think even the Board of Education was, told by the contractor to start with that, no, we can't do that. Well, this was a proposal that my understanding is, and we'll probably hear more about this, is by doing this, it locks in everything. It allows them to get started even without our LGC approval, in that it does allow an opportunity that whoever's on the board, and I know we're going on through with the LGC, but it does allow that point that you have a vote, which we have committed to going ahead with the LGC. But it also allows that you do have an option if you don't want to. I don't know that that'd be a great idea, but you do have an option to say at the back end of that you don't want to do it. But the point is, I have, this thing right here has wore me out, to be honest with you. In constructions, from a common sense, all different ways. I went back and forth, like, like trying to figure out, okay, the if, ands, and buts. The thing is, and I've even looked at grants all through the state, there's been a few grants that certain counties has been able to stay underneath those allotted funds. Not many, but there has been a few. The problem with our project, and this is where the caveat is, logistics of the way this is done is going to be expensive. It is not a normal build. You got to tear down some, you got to do barricades, you got to protect the kids, you got to move stuff around. It's just a killer. So I guess my findings, my personal findings of all this whole situation is, this is not a cheap way to do this. I feel like, and I know the reason that the county, I know the reason the Board of Education would not consider possibly another site, because if you went to a different site, if we had a site, it would be cheaper for the county to spend $1.5 million on infrastructure and buying land and building that place there. And they could probably build it within that range. But understand the logistics, that's not really viable because of what we have around that area. So I guess my thought process is, I don't like how all this has come to play. There's things I have, I've had concerns through the whole process, but the thing is, we are here. You could go a lot of, we could make life miserable and push them to go back out for bids, but the other thing is, there's a lot of things as the commissioners, we do control purse strings of what is extra funding, but we don't get to dictate how they put it out for bids. Once the state says they've done everything they're supposed to do, even if we went down that road, it's like, okay, y'all gotta go back and put it back out for bids. We don't get to write the criteria, what those bids need to follow. That is the Board of Education. So my deal is, this is where we are. I really did like the conversation I heard from the actual contractor. I do think this company is very legit, knows what the heck they're talking about. I just feel like they've got a really good plan laid out, and I think from a construction point of view, I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to lock everything down, because if this keeps dragging on and dragging on, this can get worse, and if this is legal findings from, and I don't even know if they sign this contract. I don't know if we have to be a part of it. I don't know where that goes, but I do know that Fred is working on a contract to this effect. But I got more information than I've ever got from that one meeting. There is a lot of contingencies built in this, and that contractor did answer to the effect that there is places, and there is allotments of money that is not used, that they will be identified. And so, in other words, and the reason the contingencies are built in there is because of the way it was bid. If you did a at-risk type deal, that's a whole different ballgame. But my take is, and I'm just one person, but I think they got a good plan. This would allow them, if they can write up this contract, and it is legal to do it this way, they can lock in all their, like I said, the subs, also the suppliers, and there's a possibility, their idea is when everybody goes home for Christmas holidays, they can start doing some of the logistics and setup, and they can start moving forward. So this plan allows them to move forward. Like I said, I could probably write up a whole list of things. I'm not been happy with how we got here, but the point is, we are here. So we got to figure out how to move forward. So that's my take on our meeting, and Bobby's can add to that or what his thoughts are.
I think, that meeting was, like Timmy said, the most information that we've had, up to this point. And it was good meeting with the contractors. There was a lot of discussion about a draft, contract. They were sort of looking maybe last week, but hopefully they would have a draft copy of the contract this week. Maybe it'll be next week, I don't know. But I think, we'll have to look at that contract and have legal look at the contract and be sure that it's something that, that we can do. Breaking this down into phase one and phase two was a little concerning to me about how the money would be spent, how the money would be appropriated. It's a doable, the way that they presented it, it sounded doable. But there again, we have to be sure that we're doing it the proper way. I'm just looking forward to looking at that draft copy or having legal look at the draft copy. It was an extended meeting, hour and a half, almost hour and 45 minutes. Timmy and I both had the opportunity to ask a lot of questions. Change orders was a big question, and how they would be handled. So right now, I think we're just waiting on the contract or the draft copy.
I need to add one thing. What I didn't finish with that second phase is the question was asked, how this first phase affects, because there was a 20-month plan for the first phase, a 16-month plan for the second phase. Well, some of the Board of Education said, well, if the worst happens, and so when they stop at the first phase, if something happened and they had to stop, where would the buildings, how would the construction, and the contractor address this as the way that first phase stops, they do not do anything in any of the CTE classes or what we called ag classes. All that stuff stays exactly like it is. So they basically stopped there because the question was, again, like if something happens, funding completely stops. It can be stopped and it will not affect. In other words, that part never has changed. It just stays that way. That was a question, like if you stop in a phase, like you stop at second phase, is it going to be half constructed? And the contract said no. The first phase will do all the front part, all the way back to the CTE classes, and that part, the CTE classes would not be touched until the second phase. So that's how that plan goes down. And so, again, there was a lot of questions asked about the what-ifs, and that's what we were told.
Go ahead, Mr. Carter.
I'm not even sure I need to ask, but I wasn't at that meeting. Heather wasn't at that meeting. April wasn't at that meeting. We identified just over $60 million cost.
Yeah, and I'm gonna actually get y'all to make a copy of this so y'all can keep it in, so you can look at that.
The only question I have is what is the breakdown between the two phases to equate to that $60 million?
I think they'll have that on that contract when they do that draft, is my understanding. Now, ask me that question again exactly.
You identified two phases.
Yes.
All right, so somewhere there's a cost that phase one is.
Correct.
And somewhere there's a cost for phase two.
Because that is not 60 million. The
Right.
first phase is not 60. And my understanding is when they do that draft, they will have that identified.
And I understand the process that they're trying to get to. Contract that I assume is gonna be presented to this board is an agreement or an understanding of reducing it down to that 60 million, whatever extra dollars. And the contractor is agreeing to that $60 million. So what happens to the remaining 6.5 or whatever million dollars?
It's a very legit question. I think we'll get more answers to that.
I think all that, the breakdown was supposed to be in the contract, or in this draft copy
Yeah.
of the contract. So,
Yeah, because there will not be a need for $60 million to do phase one. See what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah, we just
understand
need to
that.
know, where that is, where that stopping part. And I know this was just a proposal to start with, and I'm sure and my question was, is it even legal? So there's a lot of details that will be worked out to that, and I'm sure Heather will probably look at it also. But that's a good question, because when you do this contract and the possibility, if the contractor's saying, well, you get to the end of phase one, it can still, your school can operate if you never did phase two. But, so there is that does need to be identified in that process. And that's my understanding through the draft, they were gonna try to be more detailed about it.
any other questions or comments?
Very informative.
Okay. That answer your question,
Yes.
John?
Yep, very informative.
Okay, we'll move right along to item number 2 under section C, Alleghany County 911 SBC contract.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Carter.
make a motion that we table until the questions in the PSAP evaluation be included in the contract specifically. They found we were deficient in did not provide console maintenance, personnel maintenance agreement. That's this. That would fulfill that requirement. However, in reviewing the contract, it does not specify the documentation for the installation, maintenance, and test records for the dispatch is not included in the contract. Does not include in the contract, provide maintenance records of all system functions. We can't go back 5 years because if they don't exist now, we can't go back. But I feel that the contract should have a provision in there that maintenance records for all system functions be provided. Also, question 91, does the PSAP have a quality assurance process? The contract should specify that there would be a quality assurance process. Question 92, did not provide monthly and annual measurements used in quality assurance. I think it's a contract should specify that the monthly and annual measurements must be provided to the E911.
Daniel, you got a comment?
Yeah, questions 91 and 92
Yeah.
are in reference to QA for emergency medical dispatch, not
Okay.
for,
All right?
now, I'm not suggesting we shouldn't hold their feet to the fire for radio
Right,
performance.
well,
but-
if it deals with maintenance and it was a deficiency found in the assessment, I think we should make sure it's in the contract to hold feet to the fire.
I just wanted to point out that
Yeah.
91 and 92 are a different topic.
Okay, well, you know it better than I, I'm just looking at the questions and,
And there is one other, I've actually looked through this contract a little bit myself. There is one other correction that needs to be made. And it's where it lists the tower sites that they will provide services for. There is one that is missing off that list.
which one?
Rich Mountain is not included on
Is
this
that the
list.
one in Ash?
No, it's out in Clay Creek.
Oh, okay.
And I sent a text message down to them this morning, and his answer was, whoopsie, I forgot to put that one on the list. So it is supposed to be on there.
I think my motion to table still holds until these corrections are made, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carter, comment?
I mean, this was for information today, so, you would not act on it until your next meeting anyway.
Okay, I withdraw my motion, and if you would identify those deficiencies that I pointed out, then discuss with him.
I think, it sounds like Daniel and I are gonna get real close here over the next little bit. And I know he's looking forward to that, so.
Please be aware that don't ask, don't tell is still in effect.
And this being a contract, I think under the county manager, I think, I want to be sure that Heather looks at it and has a place to sign off on it. Any other questions? This will come up again next, at a regular meeting. Any other questions, comments? Moving right along to section D, general business for action, fire service contracts, Piney Creek, page 33 through 37.
So you do have provided in your agenda the fire services contract for Piney Creek Volunteer Fire Department. And I will point out just a correction that should be done to all the fire services contract on page 34. It said 9A communities. It actually needs to be 9S communities. We think that was just a typo.
Motion to approve with the correction noted.
A motion and a second. Any other questions? Any questions? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed likewise? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
And then you do have the second one that's been provided by Sparta Alleghany Volunteer Fire Department for consideration also.
Motion to approve with correction noted.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed likewise? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Have you gotten all the other ones back yet?
We have not. Did speak to Cherry Lane on Friday, and I have sent Glade Creek. We have an updated email address for Glade Creek, so that I have sent that to them as of Friday also. So I think they're all in the works.
I spoke with Glade Creek prior to the meeting. He is awaiting the next meeting of his board, at which time they will approve and get it back to us.
Any other comments? Thank you, April. Moving right along to section E, county managers' comments, planning and inspections, monthly report, and then Alleghany employee appreciation picnic.
Those two are mentioned, so I won't mention those again. I would like to point out, Mr. Spicer gave us a good facilities update. I think one, David, that we neglected to mention was 90 South Main. The complete paint job is on that now, so I hope everyone has had the opportunity to see that. I've received several compliments on the building. I think it's certainly made a big improvement to it. I'll remind everybody that applications are still being received for the county manager position here. And the first review of those applications will be the week of September 23rd. So once those are all received, I will notify the board accordingly and begin talking about how you want to go through that process. And that's all the comments I have today.
In the county employee picnic, that's the
Friday from 11 till 2.
11 till 2.
at Davis Field if weather holds. If not, we'll be in the Black Building.
Softball game or
Several outdoor activities are planned, yes, sir.
dressed appropriately?
Come ready,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Commissioner comments, start with John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things that I have run into, basically the number one topic of the people that have discussed it with me is, of course, the new school. I was spoken to by a gentleman that advised me that I was incorrect in that I said that the advertisements for bids were in the Winston-Salem Journal and the Alleghany News, alluding that that was the only places that the requests for bids were. He pointed out that it did go on a bulletin board that went statewide, but at the same time, he stated that he had spoken with several construction companies and they would not touch it because it was not at risk. So I was deficient in that because I failed to point out that it was on the bulletin board for bid requests at a state level. Other than that, I gave you a long explanation on the radio system. That was just background and some idea of what the technical aspect that the county runs into. Is this something that's going to take time? Yes. We can't avoid that. We will look at it and do what we can do as commissioners. It will be long after I am off this board, I can assure you of that, because the study will take time, and then the decision on how we're going to correct the deficiencies will come in. I'm sorry, but there's certain of us on this board that were graybeards. We remember whenever there wasn't a radio system. Not pointing out the county manager. With your exception, sir, you're a young buck. I'm referring to those of us that have seen more than 3/4 of life in this county. Whenever I was young, we'd had no ambulance service. There was no first responders per se. There was one fire truck in the county. It was housed in a shack that was about more down on the ground than was up, and it didn't even have an enclosed cab. You remember that, don't you, Bobby? Whenever you reported a fire call, you phoned it in, and they did a mass ring to all the volunteer firemen in Sparta. Sparta covered the entire county. There was there was no paging system. There was no radio system. You could be picked up from a wreck in Sturdivant's ambulance, and if you didn't make it, you rode the same ambulance whenever you went to the cemetery. So believe it or not, we've come quite a ways in this county whenever you look at it in the lifetime of some of us that are on this board. Not to denigrate the volunteers that give out their time, their funds, and place themselves in jeopardy whenever they are going to a call. We will support you. We will do the best that we can, but there are certain limitations of what we will be able to do. Please bear that in mind. Other than that, thank you, first responders, for the time dedication that you put in to the community. It is appreciated, and bear with us. Other than that, Mr. Chair, I have nothing more.
Michelle?
Let me start out by saying I feel a bit thrown under the bus today. I wish Chief Higgins was here. I like to handle business eye to eye, but I just like to say that being a fire commissioner, I've never missed a fire commission meeting. and I realize the importance of it, and I listen to everything that they say every meeting. We meet every other month. And you know, a lot of people don't understand, and I didn't understand it either until I got into government, that, you know, some issues are pretty simple, but a lot of issues are very complex. And this communications issue is one that is very complex. But it is something that has been brought up quite a bit, and I feel like that we have taken steps to troubleshoot and try to get to the root of the issue. And I feel like we've kind of gone through all those steps now, and this propagation study is the next step. You know, to say that I haven't addressed this is a complete and utter failure. So, and you know, I sent an email out 2 weeks before I set the tones off to have all these fire contracts in. And you know, Miss Ham has a right to have a day off of work. So, you know, I'm sure that her office was open and the contract could have been left there. So, I understand that our firemen and women are very dedicated, and they're very passionate about what they do. And thank God for them, because they are volunteers. So, I can certainly appreciate that. And as my job as fire commissioner, I'm going to do a little bit of work right now, and I'm going to send the call out for individuals and businesses. Please donate to your local volunteer fire department. We have an upcoming fire parade coming up where we appreciate our volunteers, and it's an opportunity where the children come out and get to look at the fire trucks and talk to the firemen. And you know, that's really where it all begins, of showing appreciation to our fire department and growing your fire department. You know, you never know what it's going to mean to some young person to see that fireman and see that fire truck and say, I want to do that when I get old enough. So the fire departments don't have the funds to buy all the little fire hats and the candy and different things. So I'm asking local businesses, and I'll do it myself, to step up and give your local fire department some donations to be able to buy these things for the firemen to hand out. So that's my plea to you today. I also want to bring up that our county fair is coming up September 26th through the 29th. Please come out and support that. I've said it before, as a youngster, this was a big deal in my life. And I always look forward to the fair and entering things in the fair and bringing home ribbons, and bring your kids out, because it is truly a cultural experience, and a lot of people put a lot of time into this. So please come out and enjoy it. They try really hard to make this nice, and you know, I feel like the county fair is one of the cornerstones to your local society. So come out and enjoy. That's all I have.
Thank you. Timmy?
Really not a lot on mine, except, I think sometimes people, this group sitting here is a local working body of government. And, it's not, you know, I think my advice to people when they come and try to bring us information is leave all the personal stuff between them and the other people outside that door. And it would be more productive of trying to problem solve. And I think that's what we do all the time. We're just constantly trying to fix something, make something better. And I think, everybody has passions about different things, and everybody has their opinions about things, and that's all fine. But the radio stuff, I don't even know where the harassment thing is. I don't have a clue what that's about, but you know, if there's something going on, maybe you need to approach it a little bit differently and try to figure out, because you don't really, you got to dig through the weeds to figure out what we do need to fix. But the point is, ever since I've been up here, the radio things, we've been constantly trying to move forward. But Michael's got a great idea. That's why Michael is who he is, and he's got a wealth of knowledge that he can bring to us. I don't have a clue about that. I mean, that's great information, and I think that's identifying a problem is what you first got to do, and if we can't do it, it's in other words, just like Michael said, not to say that we don't know what or some of our people don't know what they're doing. They're doing all they can do, but sometimes we have to reach outside that, and try to figure out, get somebody that has more knowledge of that, and get a feedback from them, and then, yeah, sure, it may lay out of almost when you do have those findings, some of that stuff may be beyond our possibility of budgeting for. We don't know, but then we get that information and then we'll make a decision. But the other thing is just like John's brought up, even the things that we can do is never going to be perfect in the radio system because we live in the mountains. I mean, I don't care, like Daniel had mentioned, in Ashe County, there's going to be places that it's just going to be that way, and that's just the reality of it. And I do get, like, if they're out on a site and they're trying to have radio communication and somebody's in desperate need of medical care, a lot of emotions are running around and stuff, and I get that. But they also need to realize that there is things constantly being done, but, bring that stuff to the attention and we'll just keep working on it. Other than that, and just, again, a big day's coming up for the employees. I know Michael didn't elaborate on it much, but this is a big day for him too. Because this is going to be a picnic this is probably the last picnic of him being manager for sure. It'd be nice to have him visit the employees later, but yeah, it's a big day for them to have some time off and spend some time with everybody and have some fun with each other and at the same time be appreciated like they should be on their picnic day. So I think that was all, but other than that, that's it.
Thank you. Greg?
I'm good today, Bobby.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick things. September was a busy month in the county. We had the rodeo this past weekend. I believe this upcoming weekend's the Heritage, then the Ag Fair. So for the next several weekends, there's going to be a lot to do in the county. Addressing the public comments. Public comments are just what it says, public comments. It's not a banner back and forth between board members and whoever's speaking. We're here to hear what the public has to say, and I especially appreciate people speaking. And people get passionate about some of the things they say, but we do have a set of rules that we need to follow. So I thank anybody and everybody for making public comments. Just one last thing. I think this weekend, I know the Veterans Park was extremely busy. Almost every Saturday and Sunday, that place was full of vehicles. I think there was a lot of little soccer tournaments for the young kids going on the main field. Sometimes these things last late into the evening, and I would like the county to look at the possibility of putting a few more lights between the parking lot and the actual walking track and the field, especially going across the bridge. There's a lot of people that use that at nighttime to go walk on the track. So I think as a safety feature, it would be nice to see if we could have either some type of additional street lights or some solar solar lights possibly. That's all I've got. And then we have Heather, do you have anything to add? Danielle and Miss April. So we have a request for closed session.
Let's take a 10-minute break.
Pardon me?
Take a 10-minute break.
10 minutes?
25.
We'll go into closed session in just a second and have about a 5 or 6 minute break, use the restroom. A request for closed session pursuant to GS 143-318.11, closed session, permitted purposes to consult with an attorney and then personnel. Need a motion and a second.
Motion to go into closed session.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Let's be back here,
12:30.
at 10 till 12.